The Ukrainian troops launching an offensive in the Kursk direction are not only equipped with a large number of Soviet weapons on one hand, but also equipped with many Western weapons that have rarely appeared on the battlefield before. In addition, NATO has also provided a large amount of intelligence and tactical command-level support for this Ukrainian operation. However, the Russian forces in the Kursk direction are relatively weak. In this area that mainly relies on traditional railways for transportation, it is not easy to quickly mobilize heavy troops to engage in a head-on confrontation with the Ukrainian army. Therefore, at the beginning of the contact between the two sides, the Russian army used various long-range weapons such as the Iskander ballistic missile, UMPK glide bomb and Lancet loitering munition to carry out strikes, causing the losses of Ukrainian personnel and heavy equipment to rise rapidly. Nevertheless, the possibility of Russia using nuclear weapons in eastern Ukraine or Kursk is extremely slim. Conducting tactical nuclear strikes not only cannot change the battlefield situation for the Russian army, but also will face a huge amount of doubts and public opinion pressure at home and abroad. Such a disadvantageous action will definitely not be taken by Russia for both Russia and Ukraine. Maintaining a long frontline defense and defense of more than 1,000 kilometers in places like eastern Ukraine has almost exhausted the manpower and material resources of both sides. So, why were tens of thousands of Ukrainian troops able to march deep into the Russian hinterland? Is the Russian border troops really so incompetent? What is the probability of Russia using nuclear weapons? According to Ukrainian officials, they admit that Russia has made certain progress in the east and south of the 600-mile front in Ukraine. However, they insist that there has been no major breakthrough, and its progress has come at a high cost. Ukraine passed an expanded conscription bill in April, but as of mid-July, Ukrainian President Zelensky was still complaining in an interview that there is a lack of suitable training grounds in the country for new troops to complete training, and the 14 newly formed brigades have not received the weapons and equipment promised by the West. But based on a comprehensive look at battlefield reports from all sides, the Ukrainian troops launching operations in the Kursk direction are using a large number of Soviet weapons, while also being equipped with many Western weapons that have rarely appeared on the battlefield before. For example, on August 15, both the BBC and Sky News claimed that the British-made Challenger to main battle tank appeared on the Kursk front on August 23. TASS quoted Major General Ayla at November, deputy head of the General Political and Military Department of the Russian Armed Forces, and commander of the Akhmat Special Forces, as claiming that the Russian army used a drone worth only 60,000 rubles to destroy a French-made Crotale air defense missile system worth 8 million euros in Kursk. Not to mention that in order to delay the Russian army's actions in Kursk, Ukraine claimed to have used the American-made HIMARS to destroy multiple bridges on the Seym River. In response, the Russian side hyped up in a tit-for-tat manner that the M270 self-propelled rocket launcher was destroyed in the counterattack. But later, the two sides fell into an argument over whether the destroyed target was a decoy compared with publicly providing weapons. NATO's deeper and more crucial support for the Ukrainian army's operations in Kursk comes from the intelligence and even tactical command levels. On August 23, Reuters quoted NATO official news as saying that on the previous night, the Gilin-Kirkin air base raised its security level due to potential threats shown by intelligence information. The NATO early warning and reconnaissance aircraft groups from this base patrol uninterruptedly around Ukraine for 24 hours, which is regarded as a key element to ensure that the Ukrainian army has a certain advantage in intelligence warfare and electronic warfare, in order to suppress the small number of drones deployed by Russia in the Kursk region. With NATO technical support, the Ukrainian side took the lead in conducting suppressive interference on the Russian reconnaissance platforms and the entire communication and command network around the predetermined combat area. Because the Ukrainian army has intelligence and electronic warfare advantages in the Kursk direction and has concentrated troops such as the 80th and 82nd Airborne Assault Brigades. At the beginning of the operation, the Ukrainian side clearly felt that the Russian defenders in the Kursk direction did not seem to be prepared for defense. Soldiers of the Ukrainian 82nd Airborne Assault Brigade said, "The Russian army is unarmed and never expected us to come, or at least did not appear in the expected way." Subsequently, the Ukrainian cyber troops invaded the terminal of the Russian railway system from the Kursk railway port and launched a large-scale cyber attack. The reasons for this situation are as follows. First of all, there is indeed a problem of weak Russian forces in the Kursk direction. Moreover, in an area with a dense river network and mainly relying on railways to undertake transportation tasks, it is not easy for the Russian army to quickly mobilize heavy equipment for a head-on confrontation with the Ukrainian army. In the weeks when the Ukrainian army entered Kursk, it seemed to have been controlling the rhythm of the advance. However, while the Russian army did not recall the frontline elite troops from areas such as eastern Ukraine, it began to mobilize various long-range weapons in the direction of Kursk, from Iskander and UMPK glide bombs to Lancet loitering munitions, causing the loss of Ukrainian army equipment to rise rapidly. According to information from the Ukrainian General Staff and Oryx analysts, it is believed that the attacking cluster, composed of about 6 brigades, some independent battalions and support forces launched by Ukraine in the Kursk direction, has lost a large number of valuable armored vehicles. The reason is that the Ukrainian armored forces are largely exposed to ambushes by Russian drones, artillery and anti-tank missiles. An analyst from Oryx said that, in the first 9 days of the invasion, Ukraine lost at least 4 tanks and 41 infantry vehicles. The lost vehicles include a rare British-made Challenger to tank and several American-made Stryker. Last year, all 14 Challenger to main battle tanks provided by the United Kingdom were equipped to the Ukrainian 82nd Airborne Assault Brigade. But on the 6th day of the Kursk operation, the Russian army announced that it had ambushed a Ukrainian armored column with Lancet loitering munitions, and the Challenger 2 was destroyed. The Russian army has an overwhelming advantage over Ukraine in terms of the number of various technical weapons. Although the concentration of electronic warfare and long-range firepower strike platforms by both sides in the Kursk direction will have an adverse impact on their actions on major fronts such as eastern Ukraine. In comparison, Russia has less difficulty and impact in mobilization. It's just that this concentration and mobilization require a certain amount of time. On August 20th, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announced the establishment of a coordination committee, led by General Yuri Yevgeny, Deputy Minister of Defense, responsible for military and security issues in Bryansk, Kursk and Belgorod regions. It is said that Yevgeny has now arrived in Kursk Oblast. Prior to this, Yevgeny was mainly responsible for military contacts and cooperation between Russia and African countries. This personnel appointment also indicates that Russia does not want the offensive and defensive actions in Kursk to affect operations in eastern Ukraine. In addition, the Russian side announced that Lieutenant General Buliga, Deputy Minister of Defense, will be responsible for solving logistical, transportation and assisting civil authorities in evacuating civilians. In the Coordination Committee, Deputy Minister of Defense Vlad Kovy is responsible for engineering and construction, and 3 new army group structures in Bryansk, Kursk and Belgorod are established. The unspecified commanders of the newly established army groups and the unspecified representatives of the Russian General Staff are jointly responsible for the construction of the anti-drone air defense system in Kursk. Although there was a lack of large Russian army formations deployed in the Kursk region before, and the construction of the future combat system and logistical problems will still plague the Russian army for a long time. It is not appropriate to deny that the combat effectiveness of the Russian army is lame. The Russian National Defense Control Center has established a special working group responsible for resolving supply and technical weapon allocation issues in Bryansk, Kursk, and Belgorod. These actions are in line with Russia's existing military mobilization system, indicating that the Russian army attempts to consume the Ukrainian forces entering Kursk first, with its superior artillery, aviation, and other long-range strike platforms without withdrawing frontline troops in eastern Ukraine. At the same time, combat units are drawn from second-tier troops on the front lines in Kaliningrad, an exclave overseas, Crimea, and eastern Ukraine, and sent to the periphery of Kursk. Judging from the current battlefield situation, the Russian army will almost certainly choose to first use concentrated artillery, aviation, and a large number of suicide drone loitering munitions to strike Ukrainian technical weapons in Kursk. At the same time, long-range strike platforms are aimed at Ukraine's logistics supply lines to prevent the Ukrainian army from expanding the occupied area through air interdiction and gain time for the subsequent concentration of superior Russian forces and launching a counterattack. This tactic has achieved results, and the Russian side has begun to announce that it has controlled the situation in Kursk. If the Russian army turns to a counterattack in the next step, it is very likely to repeat the old trick and once again use thermobaric bombs combined with 1.5 tons or even 3 tons of glide bombs in the Kursk direction, as previously used in the offensive in eastern Ukraine to clear Ukrainian defensive strongholds. Then, small groups of infantry launch an assault with the support of armored vehicles and artillery. However, different from the eastern Ukraine front, the question is whether the Ukrainian army can quickly build a defense line in the controlled area of Kursk that can partially offset the Russian army's firepower advantage, and whether it can use artillery and air defense equipment provided by the West to limit the Russian army's firepower advantage. It is rumored on the internet that Russia may use nuclear weapons in eastern Ukraine to force the Ukrainian army to withdraw from Kursk. In the author's opinion, this possibility is extremely slim. At present, the Russian army has successively captured strategic locations such as Red Army Village and New Yorktown in eastern Ukraine, opening up the situation for the next westward operation. If tactical nuclear weapons are used at this time, it will not bring any change to the battlefield situation. Instead, it will give others an excuse in the international community. Moreover, the remarks about using nuclear weapons in Kursk are also unfounded. If this situation comes true, regardless of the contest between Russia and Ukraine in the Kursk direction, just the massive domestic public opinion pressure will overwhelm the government and the military. Such a disadvantageous action will definitely not be taken by Russia, however, compared with the Ukrainian army that needs to rely on the highway network for replenishment. The Russian army can mobilize heavy equipment to the periphery of Kursk and organize a logistics supply network with the help of Kursk's powerful railway network from within the country. Its transportation capacity is much higher than that of the Ukrainian army. The fact that the Ukrainian army failed to break into the Kursk nuclear power plant also enables the Russian army to continue to use this energy supply station. The only thing that is relatively favorable for the long-term presence of the Ukrainian army in Kursk is the agricultural area. More than 70% of the land in Kursk Oblast is agricultural land. However, in the long run, it is almost impossible for Ukraine to build a defense line like that in eastern Ukraine and Kursk. The reason is that the area controlled by the Ukrainian army lacks a large number of large residential areas, and there are not enough mechanical engineering equipment and materials that can be called upon. Therefore, after dispersedly seizing territory with small NATO-style battle groups, the Ukrainian army, although it once claimed to build fortification lines, soon there was no follow-up. Instead, it chose to use the long-range strike platform provided by NATO to destroy the bridges on the Seym River that might be used by the Russian army, of course. This concentration of artillery and other long-range strike means has brought a relatively large negative impact on the Ukrainian army's defense in eastern Ukraine. A battalion commander of the 47th Brigade of the Ukrainian army said, "Insufficiently trained recruits led to the loss of territory on the eastern front of Ukraine. Some people don't want to shoot. But even the 47th Brigade of the Ukrainian army has been transferred to Kursk." So, how to maintain the next line of defense has indeed become a difficult problem that is well known to both the West and the Ukrainians, but no one wants to mention too much.